So I was recently having a conversation with my friends about table politics, particularly at a Commander game. And we were discussing how, as much as we talk about the mechanics of the game and different cards, different advantages, and different strategies, there is a large portion of the game that is social, which is the gathering part. Some people love it, some people hate it. In some way or the other, we all have to take part in that table politicking, even if the way you're taking part in it is by actively making the choice to not take part of it. So in this video, I wanted to have a little chat about politicking in Magic the Gathering. In some ways, you can engage in it effectively, whether you choose to engage in it or not. Before we get started, my name is Akshay, you're watching Cozy Card Gamer. Let's hop right into it. I think the number one thing that we have to talk about before we dive into it is kind of a prerequisite before even having this discussion, which is the social contract, or the concept of the social contract. Feelings are a big part of politics, and this is a real game with real players. And I think a lot of the times we tend to forget that because, we're pretty strategy minded. We like to think of the different kinds of strategies and stuff, but at the end of the day, especially if you're a newer player and you're playing Commander, you'll start noticing that there are four, including yourself, very real people at this table typically, and they're going to have big feelings, and there's going to be big feelings assault, and you're going to have to deal with that. So before we get further to it, let's just get to a common understanding that at the end of the day, it is a multiplayer free-for-all game. While politicking and having fun is great, and a lot of the times in casual formats, the gathering part and the communication and the conversations is the fun part. But at the end of the day, it is a free-for-all multiplayer game, and you're trying to win the game, right? So let's just talk about that social contract. And at the end of the day, know that you are going to have to swing at somebody to win. You're going to have to eliminate somebody. I'll put a quick asterisk on that as we get later into the video. Stay tuned to find out what I mean by the asterisks. Me personally, as a competitive person who has played video games his entire life, in fact, I make video games for a living right now, I get the competitive desire, I get the competitive urge. But at the end of the day, we have to remember that it is just a game. And I know we don't like hearing that, especially for those of us who are competitive, but at the end of the day, it is a game, and it is not worth hurting real feelings over or being kind of a jerk about. So with that social contract part aside, what I want to talk about is what politics actually is. There are several ways we can talk about it, but the biggest political catalyst I've realized as I've played a ton of games is actually just threat assessment. What politics actually is appropriate threat assessment. And there are several ways you can do that and several ways that we can mess that up. Making deals is a huge part of politics, right? So whether you're playing a deck that specially incentivizes you to make deals, or whether you're just trying to make deals, a huge part of that is threat assessment. So let's say you're in a 4-player pod, somebody just had a real pop-off turn, and they have put something out that is really, really terrifying. I just got out of a game where I played someone who was playing an X-Spells deck, and they had an Exclamation out. Clearly that is a big threat. They're about to make a ton of mana, and so the table has to band together to try to make some deals to try to get rid of that thing, right? So that's a political thing that you can make. Hey, if you get rid of this thing, I can help you out in some way. Or hey, we all agree at the table that we want to get rid of that, right? So in order to effectively politic, you have to be able to effectively threat assess. Now, what causes a lot of salt for people here is when they believe that you have incorrectly assessed the threat, or they believe, more often than not, that you as the player are being targeted when you are not the threat. And while I have seen that happen several times, if we really search deep down, what that actually is you are not able to do your pop-off turn. Sometimes. Now, occasionally, it does happen that they have misassessed the threat, and that's when it gets really tricky. I'm going to speak from personal experience here and say that really sucks. I take it very personally. In fact, I've had several conversations with very close friends of mine who have said, hey, it really feels like you're kind of picking on me. And that is a very human thing to think, right? That seems out of the game even, and it has caused elevated emotions. And something that I've learned is like, you kind of have to let people play their game. I know it sucks, and like it's going to suck, but at the end of the day, again, we have agreed to the social contract. We have agreed that this is just a game, right? And if we have agreed to that, then we have to realize that the game is going to play out the way the game is going to play out. If we start backseat gaming somebody, it's going to lead to more assault. If you start advocating for threat in a kind of negative, derogatory way, it's just going to make it an unpleasant experience for everyone. It's a 4-player format. At most, your win rate is going to be 25%. You're going to lose more than you're going to win. It's just, especially if you're playing casual, right? If you're playing bracket 2s, bracket 3s, you're going to lose more than you're going to win. And it feels really bad. But losing friends over it or getting salty over it and backseat gaming, that kind of sucks. So in general, that's kind of my overarching feelings on threat assessment, which inherently, in my opinion, is politics. Now, if any of that table manipulation, threat assessment sounds fun to you, here are some decks that I actually think you could play that would work really well. One of my favorite decks to play is Miss Bumbleflower. Miss Bumbleflower, if you are new to Magic, is a style of deck that we call group hug, meaning we are going to be helping players by giving them card draw, which on the card it says when you cast a spell, you give a card. And in return, you're basically asking for favors. Now, to the earlier threat assessment point, you are hoping to mask your threat because you are going to be building your board and amassing your resources. You are going to become the threat, but it causes interesting dynamics amongst the table because even though you're the threat and some people may recognize that you're the threat, they may want to help you because you're helping them, right? And a lot of them come with a lot of these group hug cards that give people extra resources, give people extra card draw, let them tap for more mana. That is a kind of political deck that I absolutely love. One of the reasons I love it is because it actually encourages people to play their decks. It is not a deck that stops people from playing their decks. And while it does have some of the more control-y counterspell stuff, you generally want to save those not to stop people from playing their decks, but to stop them from hurting you or interacting with you. And that's what you want to do, is like amass your resources, hide behind this little bunny, this cute bunny, and then when it's too late, that's going to strike. Another way to do a political type deck is voting. There are several voting mechanics. There are some voting mechanics like the Elven Council or the Rings Precon that can be pretty fun. Along the lines of Bumbleflower, another type of political deck that I've leaned into, which is decks like Queen Marchesa or Goad decks. Those decks essentially incentivize other people to hit other people. For example, Marchesa gives you the Monarch to start with, and then you can pretend to have your guard down and let people take the Monarch away from you, and when they do, you make an assassin. Or if they don't hit you for Monarch, you get extra card advantage, which is great. But you want to stack some Pillow Fort spells like Ghostly Prison, and you want to hide behind that, and you want to incentivize people to hit each other, and then cast some Goad spells that disrupt the table, Disrupt Decorum being one of them, Taunt from the Rampart being another one, and force people to attack each other. So it's political in the sense of it's taking the threat away from you and also deal making, right? If somebody else is, let's say, the threat, you have a lot of control removal pieces and a lot of answers, and you're pushing the threat away from somebody else. So that's another example of a political deck that I really like to play. Now, if what I said doesn't sound appealing to you and you absolutely have no intention or desire to participate in politics, well, there are some decks that also are quite good at that. Some of the decks that I like that are pretty decent at that are what I call solitaire decks. So they're decks that you do your thing. You're gonna just hang at your table. You're gonna set up your engine. You don't need anything for anybody. It sucks because since you're not doing anything for anybody else, if somebody else incentivizes another player to remove your stuff, you're kind of screwed. But at the same time, you kind of can just play your game and you are just setting up your engine, right? A deck that I like personally that doesn't require politics at all is my Hearthhole Landfall deck, right? It's going to do its thing. I'm going to play a bunch of lands. I'm going to play a bunch of landfall triggers. And then all of a sudden you are going to be the threat because you're going to have a million Scute Swarms that are going to try to swarm people in the face, or you're going to have a really tall, something like a Scythecat Cub or something like that. So landfall triggers and solitaire decks I really like. Another one, I want to give a shout out to Nitpicking Nerds video where they built a deck that is supposed to not politics and you are silent and you don't really talk and you're slowly amassing your resources. I tried it out. It's actually pretty fun because it doesn't look like you're doing a bunch of threatening things and you're just amassing a big land state. I will leave the link to that below. I'd highly recommend checking it out. It's actually a pretty fun deck. The last type of deck that I want to talk about that doesn't really take politicking into account is group burn. There are different kinds of group burn. If you're gonna play a Rakdos just absolute burn deck, you are gonna be the target number one, and people are just going to focus you down because they don't want to die of the burn. Another deck that I really like actually here is Eshki Teemer's Roar. You're gonna do really scary things with this deck, but you actually aren't focusing anybody. You are playing your game. So you don't have to pick who to attack. You don't have to miss threat assessment. You don't have to deal with people's salty feelings about, well, I thought you should have done that or that. Everyone's getting it the same. Everyone's getting burned the same way. And then by that time, when the burn happens, the threat is likely you. So you shouldn't feel bad about swinging out after that. So I would highly recommend group burn decks as well if you aren't into the politics of Magic. This is a vast topic that I would be happy to explore more in depth. This was just kind of some thoughts that I had and that I'd been thinking of after talking to my friends. If you'd like this video, make sure to check out my other content where I discuss some new sets and I discuss what's coming out in Magic in 2026 and give you my honest opinions on them. If you stuck around till the end, thanks for watching. My name is Akshay from Cozy Card Gamer, and I will catch you in the next one.